Hey everyone, Thomas had a question for me about what Bible to use, or what I'm looking for. Let me talk about that a little bit. My name is Dan Paulson. Everyone, welcome to the channel. I can answer that question, NRSV, but I don't typically do that. I tend to go NRSV, and here's why. I like doing this. I like doing that. I modify this. I modify that. And there's people. My own daughters, when they were kids, would be like, "Dad, can you just get to the point? I just asked you a question." This material requires mentally working it through, in order to understand it. So, okay, I just want to say that. So with respect to the Bible, there's a little bit more to it than just I use the NRSV. I will tell you why I use the NRSV. It's because it was done by scholars in more recent times, and it's accurate from the original source. As far as Thomas' question, looking for me, his question was, I bet you look for the purest source. I'll admit, and I have before, I am an English speaker only. That's as far upstream as I can go with the material. So I don't want to grab something English. The Bible, there were versions of the Bible, Good News for Modern Man, other stuff like that at one point in time, that were derived from people trying to make God's word sound better. So they're trying to reform all of this stuff, and they're taking that layer 2 right there and trying to describe the supernatural in the way that they believe it, and they're dropping the template. Downstream translations of the Bible, I would not use anything other than the King James Version if I didn't have a choice. If I had a choice, I would go to the NRSV. And the reason is because interpreters, when they're interpreting, they have to make choices about what words to use. Things don't line up. The best example I could have would be to take like 6 of my Tao Te Chings, different translations, and go and grab a verse and read all 6 of them and show you that across the board there was one original Chinese verse that these 6 are derived from by different translators, and you would read them and go, wow, they sound different from each other. If I only had one, how would I know? And then I have had people tell me, don't use any translations except for this one or for that one. That is wrong. We're looking to average out what's going on. There are some to stay away from. I've got one by a Legge guy that's kind of artistic and, like a coffee table book, and he tried to rhyme everything. Stay away from stuff like that. You really want something that is original, core verbiage as much as possible. People doing those translations probably do not know that the template is there. They're just translating. We need to average it out. However, when you take something like that, there's a translation from Chinese to English. It's not perfect. Another one from Chinese to English. Another one from Chinese to English. Each one of those are not perfect, but they're only one layer off. And when you start putting them all together and averaging them out, you get a better idea of what the original word must have been, or the original concept, the original idea. So it just makes more sense to have more of that. However, if you take something like the Bible in Greek and then put it into Old English, and then put it into modern English, and then that's not the way to do it. Each one of those iterations is being further watered down, further filtered. Don't use anything downstream in the Bible from that. I mean, King James, I think King James is usable. However, it's just thicker to work with. I don't like it. I don't like talking to people with it because people get confused with it. Old English is tough to read. I got a book of Shakespeare over there. It's kind of like that. Also, not all modern Bible translations did come from the King James Version. So there are other better versions that I simply don't know of. I don't want to grab one, though, that was done by somebody that had faith in the material. And also, you have to ask yourself, what is the intention of the translator? In some cases, it's simply a translation. I want to take this material from this language and share it with another culture and do my best to try and preserve it. I want to do that. And I see that there's a mental process in the background right there that I'm on board with. I want to hear what this person has to say, because they're not coming at it with any filters. They're not trying to convince me of anything. They're just trying to translate it. And different people do it. You want to look at all them. That's like that. The Tao stuff. The Bible stuff, something happens different when it's downstream. People are believers. What they want you to do is to understand the glory of something that is the carrier case, that's the shell. And things just disappear at that point. Book of Mormon, there is no monomyth in there. I won't even go there. So yeah, I use the NRSV. But then there's something else. This is why it gets complicated. We're looking at this today. They did not have this. They didn't have this. We cannot look at this like this and go, they were sitting there reading the Bible just like we are. They're not. They're memorizing it. They're passing it around. This is their media of the day. Think of your media, think of your life, think of what you do throughout the day, and then imagine all of that is suddenly gone. You're back 3,500 years in time, and you live in a wooden or a stone home that is, got bugs crawling through it, air flow through it, no windows, no glass. You're sleeping on a dirt floor. There's no lights. This is what life is. Suddenly, these stories are going to be something different. When they were put down in the Bible, what I believe is that the templates were known by church fathers. 1227, Stephen Langton, Archbishop of Canterbury, is the one who put the verses and chapters in the Bible for the first time. Originally, these were being told word of mouth, and they weren't all collected like this. They were standalone. You might hear Genesis. You might be a year or two, and you hear Exodus. You might have heard Psalms and never heard Genesis or Exodus. Things are not coming around like this, but they're coming around word of mouth. What happens now? We have them like this. We're in a format now where we no longer have them memorized. Life is different. It's now busy. We don't have to memorize them. We have a book. So we've actually unknowingly dropped a process that's very important. The memorization is how they played it out in their mind. We don't do that. However, if I read through this material, and I think there are people that are, humans are very good at pattern spotting. Some humans are incredibly good at pattern spotting. I'm one of those that is very good at certain pattern spotting and verbiage and things like that. If there's something in there that was intentionally put in there, it somehow pokes out at me. And that is what I'm finding in the Bible now. Years ago, it wasn't that way, but I wasn't into it. I didn't study it. Okay, but as I go into it and I realize there's patterns in here, I start finding things in here where they've broken it up and the verses. If you look at what he's done, as far as the chapters and verses, in some cases, they don't make sense. The reason was now we can, from around the world, talk. We're not standing together with a memorized story we're sharing. We are now around the world with a book that we can share that we don't have memorized, and I can say, what do you think of Deuteronomy 18 such and such? And people can go there and do it. So that's something that you would look at and go, okay, that's helpful for the study. Remembering, though, we still drop the memorization process and the idea that all of the knowledge was contained and could be drawn up at once and not have to be looked at in our linear progression as we're reading through it. Now, when he put the chapters and verses in, you can see in some places they look like they make sense. I know what the template is. I can see the template, and I can see that there are chapters and things in there that are fairly close to being on the template. However, then what happens is things like you go to Genesis, the 2 creation stories, and you see that there's a 7-day and what I call the 5 river and Adam and Eve. There's 2 different creation stories. First one is 7 days from start to finish. The other one is from start to the creation of Adam and Eve, and they should be aligned up side by side. But and it looks to me like, to me, I believe that the 7-day creation story was added in later and was not original. And that's something that has to be revealed. There's 2, that's the beginning of that myth right there. The first monomyth where Noah is called, there's also 2 callings right there. And that first calling where the monomyth starts matches the first creation story, the 7-day creation. However, when we put it in the Bible, you will see the chapter break where? Between day 6 and day 7. It's almost like you could see that division right there, but it's like, let's try to smooth that over. Let's try to obscure that line a little bit and make it fuzzy. So that's what it looks like to me, like somebody was trying to hide something. When you look elsewhere and go, other places it's fine, but right there, it's messed up. Then when you look at where he put the verses in, there are places where it starts right at the beginning of a sentence. You can bring that out. Then there's times where a sentence is suddenly broke up in the middle. Short, small ones. And it becomes this, to me, a visual kludge as I'm looking through it. It's like, what is this mess? I want it out of there. So I download the Bible from BibleGateway.com. I then go through and modify all of the works so that I take out all of the verses that are put in. This is not a good study one, but it's a good one for me to look at and read for myself personally, because it helps me see the patterns I'm looking for. Those verses in there almost, it's like they disrupt the flow that I need to to see when I'm reading it. If I'm listening to it, it doesn't matter. Nobody is, telling you verse 1 and then halfway through, one in whom the spirit of verse 2, God. So the Pharaoh, yeah, that's a weird stuff. I look at that and go, I'm highly suspect of that. And think of it. If somebody said, here is all this massive material, there's no verses in there, start putting some in. Would you put a mid-sentence? Sometimes and sometimes not. Okay, so honestly, now that I'm thinking about that as I talk about this, maybe everywhere that kind of numbering is happening, where things are being broken up in really kind of klutzy ways, is where he is trying to hide something. I'll keep an eye out for that. Hey, that's fun to think about. See how it just keeps growing as you're trying to figure stuff out. I go through and get all that out of there. This Bible was originally meant to get into our hands, and we're supposed to hear things in there. And we're listening for these little anomalous things in the story that are meant to get our attention that we work with. So I don't know how much this will mean to your mind, but if you can look at the screen and just take a look at the text right here, this is actually some of a conversation that Job is having in the book of Job. But imagine that we're looking at it like this, when we are actually, this is Psalms. I couldn't find Job, but this is how this was how it was intended to be delivered to us. So, this is why I talk it all through. The NRSV Bible was translated by scholars, so I trust the verbiage better. However, it maintained the format of the previous Bibles with the chapter and verse breaks exactly where they were. So I want to go one step further and take that out. And you know what? I got to say one more thing. For people advanced enough along on this, you're going to understand what I mean. At some point in time, I realized that if there's different verbiage in there, it doesn't matter. Everything has to be translated. Everything is an analog. If somebody says, if different translations use different verbiage, it doesn't matter. Those aren't real anyway. A unicorn or a leviathan or things like that, those are not real. And it doesn't matter how people try to portray them. Those are analogous anyway. So at some point you go, yeah, the translations at some point, once I see the template and I see what's in there, I can see what's accurate or what's not. You can go through material now and recognize, okay, right there nested in that concept is a calling. And then we've got a cause and effect hidden in this something right here. Then this right here is showing us cycles. Then we have the development of cycles of pain going on, starting from a pure place to a hurt place. That is going to be the sequence that you begin to recognize. When you see that it's there, it's easier to pick it out of the material. Okay, I can say that I have been looking at these long enough now and thinking about it hard enough now to realize what a difficult time we are having because of the changes that have happened in society versus the time these were out. And as I look at them more and more and more and memorize them, not really memorize them, but I just see them more and more, I'm beginning to see the patterns more by the sheer repetition of going through it repetitively. And I think that those, as we're back there then, and we're carrying the story and it's fun, but all of the repeating and the structured parts that we're going to continue to look at are meant, those are attention-getting things. There's numbers repeated a certain amount of times or words repeated a certain amount of times that become representative of that same place on the same location on the template. I mean, they're hidden in there, but they flagged them. We'll get into that. There's little codes that you can do that it's counting things. It's looking for repetitions, counting them, and seeing where they go. So anyway, okay, that's it. That's what I do. And then once I get done, I section out the Bible to where it's like, okay, from creation 1 down to where God floods the earth, that's the human life cycle. Everybody goes through that one. I will record that for myself in the beginning, and then I go through that. And then I'll record that for myself to listen to. I want my own recording of it. I've listened to other stuff too. Some of it's okay. I can't find an NRSV that isn't all dramatized. I don't want all that stuff. I'm looking for the template. I want to read it like a scholar would that's looking at each section. And then the calling. When Noah is called till Noah is naked, unashamed in the tent. No, up until the Tower of Babel. That right there is the next template. So I'll record that section just by itself. So instead of the whole Genesis, I'm taking out sections of it that I know that I can recognize them as template pieces, and I'm recording them, and then I go and I listen to them over and over again as I'm trying to put the pieces and parts in place. You see, it's a long, drawn-out process, but it's not as simple as just saying, which Bible do you use? It's this one, but here's more to it. It's not just a matter of getting the Bible and reading it. It's like, I don't like this either. They follow that same format of the other one, where the numbering and all of that is the same. And I want that out of there because it hides the template from me. And if you're looking for the template, I would recommend something like that. If that is something that, if you watch my work and see what I'm doing, it might be something you look at and go, okay, yeah, that might be helpful. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But maybe just me downloading it and going through and doing all of that is I'm hooking into spending time doing it. That's helping. I may not be studying it at that point in time, but I'm spending time with it. I'm working with it. It's kind of like my brain is still wiring and seeking the information. Anyways, that helpful? The other questions I didn't know, the end times and things like that. There were some other questions that he asked about, do I think there are end times and what to do about apocalypse or things like that. It was kind of a smorgasbord. Yeah. Okay. So I've done the end times things before. I'm total science and I'm completely pragmatic about this. This magical stuff that is framed up in here is how humans work on an atomic level or cosmic level at some point in time. I'm not that person, so I got to be careful. Quantum, yeah, atomic, blah blah. Okay, if you look at the universe, we step back and look at things. We see stars are born and they die. We see that we have a star. We know, therefore, that our star was born and that it's going to die. And that at some point in time, our planet is going to have a lifespan within the lifespan of that sun that is a smaller one. It's not going to be able to provide life until certain conditions are there. But as entropy happens and decay happens and time goes on, the sun is burning off. It take life off of planet Earth, humans completely, and just leave the animals living on themselves with nobody ever emerging up into developing technology and things like that. Just leave it all as animals and leave it alone and never touch it. And eventually the sun is going to get large enough that it's going to be, at one point it'll be the whole sky will be orange. All you would see is the sun, except that there will be no atmosphere, no water, no life on the planet. Yeah, there's going to be an end times. And nobody knows when it's coming. The Bible even tells us that. Except that it's talking about something different. It's a different thing. The end times comes in, Abrahamic material uses that, and I don't like them using that. End times and the return of Jesus, all of that apocalyptic kind of stuff I find to be dangerous. It probably would have been okay for people long ago, but now with the population this big and the world this small, it's bad because people think it's true. The return of Christ happens in the same way every time somebody finds a Buddha nature. It's just a different way of putting it. The return of Christ happens every time somebody turns inward and gets there. It's on the template. It's just held in a way that it makes people think, oh, this is true and it's really happening. So we're going to act out all over this carrier shell, not realizing that hey, it's not about the physical world. It's about your inner world and that it has to fit up there. So at the same time, you can look at the world. In my lifetime, I've seen it get more and more populated, more and more activity. There used to be, very little exposure. There was some radio and television. There was no internet. Things have escalated. Things are available in a way. People are hooked into stuff. People get wired. Most humans don't mentally discriminate very much. And that's why I like to talk things through. It's like, you listen to people. Question everything you hear. Don't believe anything. Don't believe anything I say. What I'm doing is saying what I believe, and I think what I do the way my life works, and I think the way we are like this, we listen to somebody, and if it makes sense, you go, okay, I believe that. But we don't follow that person then. We take that knowledge and make it our own. That's what I'm doing. That's what's happening here. And that's the only way this works. You have to take the knowledge and make it personally your own. But in a day and age where when they were doing it, this was their lifetime working through a story. And we don't give it much time, and we've obscured it in ways that we think are convenient for us. But what this does is it really supports the shell while really kind of hiding the template. Do you see what just happened there? You asked me about end times. I started off with cycles and I'm ending up with the Bible again. I keep steering, my head steers me this way. End times is not my issue. Will there be an end times? Yep. The world's getting bigger and we have the potential. We have the potential right now to destroy life on the planet if it was unleashed. It's sitting there. We've gone there. Things are getting bigger and crazy, and there are cycles in place. At some point in time, this is going to come true, and somebody's going to say, look, see? And I can say, you don't need that. All this is doing is saying cycles are happening, and it's going to eventually get so bad that, yeah, the end will come. But really, that's the outer shell. It's trying to teach us on the template that the end is near for us, and we can have a death and a rebirth, spiritual death and rebirth. I hurt. My life is not okay. I need to get rid of that. What has happened? We're trying to work through that. That's what the material is, and that's what the death and the rebirth is, so that you can come out the other side and go, I'm a new person now. I got rid of that. I'm reborn with a new way that my world works. I have a new world now. And then when something comes up again, you have to do it again and continue to make that path. So those cycles are always there. The Bible doesn't grab anything. The Bible has nothing new in it. Everything it has comes from other places. And I don't mean the stories, the analogs are new, but as far as, Babylon and Egypt and all of that stuff, God is just a variation of what was happening in Babylon and Sumeria. The difference is you're trying to create something that looks different. So instead of having like a bunch of gods, you just have one God. But then what do? How can you get away with that? This one's a monotheism. It doesn't have one God and then a bunch of subordinate gods. It has one God, but it has subordinate demons and angels. And, where in Genesis do the sons of God go into the young, beautiful daughters of men and defile them and Anunnaki? It's like, yeah, that's not a monotheism. You got all the parts in place. You just say it's a monotheism because there's only one God and a bunch of subordinates. What are they saying? It's one God and a bunch of subordinates. Subordinate angels, both of them have limited power. It's the same thing, just in different words. And of course, as always, those are story elements. In the purest form, God, in the shortest, simplest stories, there's a mental hierarchy. There's a higher awareness, a higher self, where we can look at ourselves detached. There's our conscious self that experiences life, decides the quality of it, and has the emotional attachment to it. There is the inner being that collects those memories and the emotional state of them, and that is gradually what we begin to live through. So those three parts are right there. The fourth part would be is that we have an inner being that can hold anything. So the other part of that would be what is the quality of what you're holding in there? We can hold good stuff. We can hold bad stuff. Those would be, like offspring or something like that. Good things and bad things. Is your life happy? Is your life bad? That's what we're holding inside of us. How do you feel? What is the general emotional state that you experience life with? That is based on the quality of what is up here. So the inner being is going to always be there, but the quality of the inner being has to be manipulated with. And based on that, the fifth thing comes into place. We flow through life. This is probably where the cosmic thing comes in. This is where that spiritual realm comes in. This is where that sixth sense, our brain is connected to each other in a realm that is not through one of our five physical senses. So it looks very mystical, but it's right next door. We're still doing it, but it's an emotional connection. And, okay. That's the simplest form. Now, when it starts getting big and there's multiple gods, they're building stories. Now you have a life. Now instead of just saying you have to go and heal yourself, now you're creating a long, big story. Again, you got a culture of thousands of people with no media. Thousands of people with no media. What would happen today if you grabbed thousands of people, shoved them together one place for a lifetime, and didn't give them any media? Think about that. Yeah, so the story would be incredibly important to have a lot of layering elements. So what happens is on this template, at each step along the way, you can just start adding big details to it with all kinds of stuff. Now we have now we don't just have a higher being, we have a higher being that really is the one where everything that we do, that we produce through life, comes through this energy source. And as we decide something and we don't like something, now as I'm producing throughout life, when I'm happy and I'm giggling and having fun, the energy from the background is where that is, where the energy for my experience is coming from, is from the background, but it's coming through a filter. When I don't feel good, it's the same thing. It's the same energy. That energy will provide your good life, your bad life. It doesn't matter. There's one energy source. And what they're doing now is starting to recognize that, break it up, and start giving it different qualities. Now, yeah, it's just a way to make the story bigger. I don't put any stock in what this says as far as that goes, yet at the same time, you can see that there will be an end. What do? We live now. We try to figure out what's going on. In short, there's going to be an end time. I don't know when. Things look bad. I don't want to focus on. I don't want to spend my days going. We're not supposed to do that. We don't live in the moment by living our demise daily. We have to pull back from that. It'll get here when it gets here, and there's nothing we can do. Taking no thoughts of tomorrow from Jesus is that very thing right there. And actually, I think that verse is something like taking no thoughts of what you will wear tomorrow, for sufficient enough is for today, or something along those lines. But in the spiritual world, worrying. What is it that I fear? What is my shame? What is my anger? What is my hatred? What is my fear? Take no thoughts of what you're going to. That's what that is. Clothing yourself in tomorrow's experience. Which ultimately what translates to, you just don't worry about things, be in the now, in his own language. Okay, the other thing, you said something about, whoever might survive is God's chosen, or something like that. To me, God's chosen on the template, when you come down to it, there is God's chosen all the time. They're throughout there. They start the monomyth. And eventually, when you realize it's a personal path, the chosen one is whoever realizes that and goes, I'm taking this personal path. I realize this story is not about the world out there, but about the world up here. And I'm going to figure out how they are trying to teach me what I'm supposed to do. And then take the path. That is the chosen person right there. And God is that part of us that knows what to do, but we never let it win. You know what you need to do. You got to resolve that. Forget it. That right there, we have to start working with that part of us. Conscious understanding that it is allowing fear to win instead of looking at the issue. The higher awareness is necessary for that. Higher awareness. It's not a being, it's just a higher awareness where you know what it is. Ever wake up at 3, 4 in the morning and you're tossing and turning and you can't get back to sleep and something's just bugging you, but you slip in and out of this, oh my God, I'm tortured by it. You need to let it go. Relax, go back to sleep. But it tortures. You're right there, arguing back and forth between the higher self and the conscious, with fear being the motivator of who wins. And that's the biggest thing to resolve right there. Whatever that is, you got to take care of that, or it's going to keep doing this. Are you recognizing parts of this, the cyclical pain, the things like that are acting out, are part of, what we're holding on to, part of that filtering system, part of the continual experience in life as we flow through the unified field, whatever it is that we, exist within, that we can experience. We can see each other within range with certain energy. We can hear each other with certain energy. We can smell each other with certain energy. We can sense each other's emotional state with certain energy. The difference there is that one is very lightweight, and it comes in through not our physical senses, but it comes into the brain through something we don't recognize, but we should recognize it. But that is where the mistaken supernatural agency comes from. At this point, the conscious needs to be the one that's in the driver's seat, though, by understanding what it's doing, that it is allowing fear of the shame, the pain, the past, whatever it is, the hurt, that it is allowing that to remain in place without addressing it. And because it is so hurtful, it doesn't want to look at it, that it is in charge ultimately without knowing that, by not allowing the higher being to step in and begin working with looking at the self. So the conscious has to be aware, first of all, that that's what's happening. We have to drop that part of us that's afraid to look at things. We have to recognize, oh, my life is unfolding because of that. My choice is simple. Accept it or go after it. I didn't have a dilemma over it, but it wasn't okay. But there's a point there where you're saying, okay, higher being, I'm going to go ahead and allow that fear. I'm going to let you pull me over that fear. Let's go ahead and experience that. And then once you get through that, that wall begins to come down. We're being shown somehow. We just have to hook in with what we're doing and understand it. Okay, enough on that one. The other one was, what to do for the apocalypse. All I can say is I've looked around a few times and thought, I think I'm pretty well set up for my camping days. I got like a ultraviolet steri pen in case water becomes an issue. And clean water out in the wilderness these days would put you on a violent, fast weight loss program that would not be healthy. You don't want to drink out of the water. There's too many cows out here, everywhere. But you could take clean-looking water like that you don't want to actually drink and just put an ultraviolet pen in the water thing and make it clean, water flowing, mud water, or flood water, something like that. You wouldn't want to drink that. You'd want to filter it. You'd want to get stuff out of it. I've got stuff like that, but not big scale. Some people, I live where I have water access in the environment. There are places where people don't have that. I don't know what you're going to do there. You have to have your own water stash. And, making sure you can, if you get some more, anyway, I got things like cans of beans that I don't like to eat, but they're ready to eat. Stuff like that in case the store gets bad. One big thing, I got like a package of, what are the little individual packets of Ready wipes. If you run out of water resources, there's times I've been camping, hiking out for week too long out there. You're not out anywhere where you, especially up in a snow line, you can't clean up. You're not going to use your fuel, your gas, your resources to melt water to try. You get funky. The funky isn't the issue, but there are other very discomfort parts that need to be kept clean that you can imagine over time. I just keeping the individual package ones, not the ones that come out of the tub, because as soon as you open that, it's like they start drying out. Anyway, I'm going to quit that. That's just because you asked the question. If there's an apocalypse, I'm not going to join any group that survives by killing the other group because they're demonize them. I can't do that. I don't know what's going to happen. So, I'm not well, here we are. The one last thing you'd mentioned about the God, the chosen, I want to suggest that during the interpretation, I have learned that all of the supernatural is part of the carrying case, part of the shell, that it is not interpreted, that at any point in time we are allowing any verses in here to exist with the supernatural explanation. We're not mentally interacting with it. It is not supernatural. There's something that has to be transitioned in there. Everything in there should be mentally interactive. I'm seeing now that there's something that's much more intense that I once thought, and it just takes a while to get into it. But I think if anytime you're reading this and trying to understand it and using supernatural to explain some parts, you're just putting them off limits to comprehension. It is. I would read it like you're reading Buddha's Dhammapada or Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching. Read it like it's a mysterious textual thing that you're trying to figure out. Okay. Hope that was helpful and not too long. I'm sure for many people it will be. Take care. See you in the next video.